Power in an inspector calls. Power and authority can be conveyed in many ways. In inspector calls, the main sources of power are located in three areas: class, wealth, and gender. Through the irresponsible interactions of the Burlings and Gerald with Eva Smith, Priestley depicts on stage his main point about how the rich abuse and misuse their power to the detriment of those who are less well off and who have little power or influence. The Burlings and the Crofts are powerful because of their place in society. As members of the upper middle class, they are in a position of privilege. Those who are of lower status, even slightly, would be expected to defer to them and look up to them as people to be respected and admired. In effect, the Burlings and Gerald live in a bubble where the day-to-day realities of life will largely leave them untouched. Because they are so out of touch, they lose the connection with ordinary people, which, for Eva, has fatal consequences. The selfishness of the Burlings and Gerald is a direct result of living behind the barriers of class. What Sheila later realizes is a kind of wall that they have built up between themselves and people like Eva. It is this real-life barrier that Priestley wanted to break down by writing the play. As an audience, we can see this most clearly in the inspector's final speech, where he reminds us that we have a duty of responsibility to one another, especially those who come from an advantaged background. As part of the various perks of upper middle class life comes wealth. Money keeps people like the Burlings and Crofts in their luxurious bubble of servants and spacious homes safe from harm and cares. It is clear that money is important to Mr. Burling, as it has paved his way to progress up the social ladder. He is keen to maximize profits for him by keeping the wages he pays as low as possible, hence his refusal to give Eva and her co-workers a pay rise. Money is the most important thing to him. Note how he begins his speech on Gerald and Sheila's engagement by pointing out the business benefits. Consequently, for Mr. Burling, Eric's stealing of money from the office is probably the worst act that any of them committed in relation to Eva. Although Eric has a nice life, he doesn't have much of his own money, which means that he has less power and independence, probably the way his controlling father likes it. Gerald, on the other hand, has more money because he is given more responsibility by his father. This, in turn, allows him greater freedom to carry out his affair with Eva. Neither Mrs. Burling nor Sheila need worry about earning. In fact, it would have been frowned upon for women of their status to do so, and can instead enjoy a life of shopping and taking tea with friends with similar backgrounds. However, mother and daughter still have a restricted life, albeit a comfortable one, simply because of their gender. In 1912, when the play was set, no woman had the vote, and society was very much male-dominated. Affluent women like Mrs. Burling and Sheila were expected to manage the home, raise a family, and play a minor public part in society by hosting dinner parties or raising funds for local charity and the like. Their main role was to support their husbands and to give them priority, a lesson Mrs. Burling reminds Sheila about early on in the play. For their part, the way the men in the play behave with regard to Eva betrays a strong strain of toxic masculinity. Mr. Burling patronizes Eva. Gerald uses Eva to conduct an affair that he knows cannot last because of their class differences. Whilst Eric threatens to assault Eva, he certainly intimidates her and uses her to satisfy his own physical desires. Elsewhere, Joe Meggerty, who's from the same class as the Burlings and Gerald, is known for his lecherous reputation, but is safe from scandal because he's from the right background. Priestley has all the men comment on Eva's attractiveness, presenting how Eva, and women more generally, are objectified and judged by their appearance. The only character to derive their power from a different source is the inspector. Whilst middle class, he is not as high up the social scale as the Burlings and Gerald, so instead his authority comes from his position as a senior police officer. This allows him to order people around and to force them to cooperate, even if they would rather not. This also acts as a reminder that everyone is equal under the law, whatever their place in society. Mr. Burling does try to assert his power against the inspector by seeking to intimidate him through his connection with the Inspector Superior, Colonel Roberts, but fails miserably. Mrs. Burling also resists, but eventually buckles against the inspector's firm manner, underscored by his legal authority. In addition, Priestley's stage directions state that the inspector has a sense of presence which lends him added power. All this encourages the audience to take on board the inspector's, and therefore Priestley's, central message about the need for real social change. Overall, we can see how being a poor working-class woman means that the unfortunate Eva is triply disadvantaged, which ultimately renders her completely powerless. She does try to assert some agency through leading the strike, but the power of money, or lack of it, leads to its failure, and with it, the loss of the last bit of influence Eva had. Without hope for any improvement, she takes the tragic decision to end her life. Only with her death is she able to exert some power from beyond the grave, and as a result gain a degree of revenge on the thoughtless, narrow-minded attitudes of the elite few. Her death is a symbol and reminder from Priestley for the rich to use their power more responsibly for the sake of the poor's well-being, a message which modern society has arguably still to hear and act upon properly today.